Hi, everyone. Stuart Gandolf. Welcome back to our podcast. Today, I have my new best friend, Cynthia Newton, which I can't believe, Cynthia, we haven't met before recently. So I'm so glad to have you on our podcast today. Hey, Cynthia, I would love you to start off by telling our audience a little bit about your background, the short version, as well as like what you're specializing in today, just to give some context for everything we're about to talk about. I think that's really going to be helpful in this case.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I knew of you. I knew the name, I know the face, but we've never really had a conversation until recently. So I always say we're in a small industry and we should know everybody, especially I'm going to date myself now. I think in my 25th year in healthcare marketing.
Yeah, it's
So,
Cynthia.
in my little mind, I think everybody knows who I am, right? Um,
Well, it's funny.
at least anybody who's been around as much as me, as long as
uh,
I, right? So
so
let's qualify that. Some of the newbies under 10 years might not know who we are,
yeah, well, I got to, before I get into your background, just fun
right?
fact. I just got off the phone with Chris Baird.
So going back, as it's, oh yeah,
No, I just got off the phone with Chris Baird and we were talking. She's like, "Oh, tell Cynthia I said hi." And I just said to Chris, I am a terrible networker. I've been so busy focusing on our own company. So anyway, I'm super excited. Go ahead and tell people about what you do.
sure. I've been in around for a long time. Initially started off in the yellow page world, which is a strange thing to mention nowadays. But think of search as like the largest yellow pages, right? When you're ready to either go to a hospital, call a doctor, you're going online and search, and you're searching for that information. So Google My Business, Google Business Profile became the biggest yellow page directory there was. Now add to it the new LLMs and people searching in Chat GPT. And, we're in a whole new Wild West right now. So my role now, and what I've focused on for the last, I'd say 15 years since Google's reared its little head up, is basically helping healthcare systems be found in search and be chosen, right? So that just doesn't entail just listings management, which I kind of was at the forefront of initially. But that includes today, reputation management, brand management. And I've delved deeper into brand management and separated there's consumer brand and then there's employer brand. And so I've really been focused, I would say, the last couple of years on employer brand in healthcare.
Perfect. And so that's really what we're going to talk mostly about today. And you also had some time, I think, with Doctor.com and I think Reputation as well. So you've had some experience with some
On the
of the big,
SaaS side of the world.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So great. So let's talk about employer branding online today. And first of all, just to maybe expand upon what does that actually mean in terms of the work you're doing, and why is that so important today?
Yeah, there's things I do and there's things I don't do, just like on the consumer side with patient experience. So it's really what can the average candidate on the employer side see about your organization, right? And how do they form an opinion about what it's like for people to be an employee at your organization? That's only the only thing that influences that is really the third party information that they can see on search. So whether that's in Glassdoor, Indeed, in Google, in Reddit, in LinkedIn, I kind of sit on that side most frequently. So it's what is that information that's out there? How is that influencing a candidate's decision to take the next step and apply to your organization? What I don't address, I can help shine a light on it, is your actual employer brand internally, right? I can't see your first party results when I'm looking from the outside. So as a consultant, I get into that with the client to take a look at what is your first party survey saying? What are your engagement surveys saying with your employees? That's the litmus test. So just like the consumer side, where we looked at what are our caps saying compared to what Google says, I do the same thing. I'm comparing what does your engagement survey, whether that's Glint, whether it's PG, what does it say when I compare it to your third party of one another, right? And if it's supportive in the sense that we have a poor brand online and it mirrors that internally on your first party surveys. That deeper work of brand work, of looking at your EVP and really working on identifying the cultural issues that you have within your organization. I don't do that. That's a Chris Baird, right? That's a Gene Hitchcock. There's lots of consultants that dig deep on that side. But what I do is bring to life and make sure that your internal is represented properly externally to candidates.
Great.
To help them make that journey. So you're competing fairly in a very competitive marketplace.
Yep. So and as our audience includes people, of course, from health systems and multi-location providers and different people like that, where the competition for employees is fierce. But we also have people from device or pharma, health plans, SaaS, different kinds of companies as well. So I think a lot of these concepts will apply for them as well, right? That we're going to be talking about today. So we should focus on what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, but these concepts are pretty broad spread in many cases, at least. So there's a lot of top employer awards on the healthcare side of the provider hospital side. How much weight should we give those?
It's a great question. I think I did a post on it. Honestly, not much. They're great for press releases and C-suite validation, right? But they rarely line up to what employees are actually saying on Glassdoor, Indeed, or Reddit. I've tested search results. I've tested in Google. I've looked at ChatGPT and Perplexity to do searches on finding top employers in healthcare. And the lists, and depending on where you're looking, are very inconsistent, right? So candidates really care about lived experience, not marketing accolades. So those awards are nice. It's a great post. It's a great press release. But, it's third-party reviews that really holds the weight more than that award ever will in the minds of prospective candidates.
Got it. And so when you're seeing or when you're looking at, for various clients, what are some of the red flags you're seeing out there that, the candidates are so much like you're helping your employer brands find this, but what are employees looking for? What are the red flags there?
So easy red flag is the rating, right? That's an easy red flag. Glassdoor likes to say that a 3.5 to around 3.7, it's the average for healthcare organizations. They like to say that that's a satisfied employee. And I'm going to beg to differ. We live in a 5-star world. So a candidate is no different than a consumer, right? When we go on to Amazon and we look at something that we're going to purchase, are we racing to the 3.5 rating? No, we want to see a 5-star or as close to 5-star as we can. And we want to see volume of reviews. So that's the other red flag, right? Is even if you have a 5-star, but you have 10 reviews compared to a product that has 2,000 reviews and it might be a 4.7. So it's not just the rating, it's also the volume of the feedback and then what people are saying in that feedback, right? So if I'm considering the things that I have access to as a candidate, I'm looking at Glassdoor and Indeed. And so, yes, the red flag, but even if someone has a better score, so say they're like a 4.1, but there's no responses, that's a red flag. Does the employer care what their employees are saying about them? Are they listening? So if you're not seeing responses, your deduction is going to be like, well, they're not listening, A, and they don't care because they're not responding, even if they are listening, B. So those are red flags. So that engaged employer, if you're not seeing people actually engaged, maybe you have a sponsored profile, so you're paying that sponsorship dollars for your ads to run, but you have a 3.2. I mean, these things are very incongruent with one another. So those are all red flags.
Got it. That makes sense. So, if you have a lot of experience with this category, what are the mistakes that organizations are making? Like, where do things go wrong?
The biggest mistake is not ignoring them, right? Pretending like they don't exist. Put your head in the sand, and you'd be shocked at the number of brands or the brands that you would think because they're top of mind those brands are most often the biggest offenders of that, of I'm not going to pay attention, I'm not listening, I'm pretending like it doesn't exist. So I would think that's like the biggest mistake is pretending like it doesn't exist, um, because it does.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, we were talking offline. Tell me about your employer index, and is that something people can easily find, or how does that work?
Yeah. So the reason why I built it, I'm not here. I'm a friend, right? I'm not your foe. I'm not your enemy. I've created a little list and it's just kind of like to bring awareness. So I started with everybody who won some type of top employer award. So whether that's Forbes, whether it was, Health Grades, whether it was Becker's, whether it was whoever was the top employer award winner. And I started with those because I figured they won a top award, right? Let's take a look at what Glassdoor and Indeed say about them. And that's how I built this roster. Was I just ranked them according to their Glassdoor overall rating. We can rank them according to Indeed. Those vary, and we can dig into the differences in scoring mechanisms on another discussion or another question. But I built this to bring awareness because it's something that I feel has been very much overlooked for many years. And the reason is because it's kind of sits in no man's land, right? HR, who is the party that actually is in charge of running ads and doing the recruitment, right? So they'll tend to own those profiles on those sites to update and make sure that those posts are listed. But marketing isn't really involved sometimes in those sites. So marketing is really about controlling what our brand impressions like, right? What is our brand voice? So it sits right now from an employer branding standpoint between these two of HR owning the function of hiring, but marketing really owning the function of brand and how that acts as a pull to bring our employees in. And so what's happened is that no one's really owned that in a really meaningful way over the years. And now we're at a point of inflection within our or in our industry that we're looking at, a potential huge shortfall of providers, on the MDDO side, even APPs by year 2034. It's extremely competitive. And so now this is becoming more and more important. And I think we're at the point where we need to start paying attention and start managing it, or we're going to really fall even further behind from our employment needs.
So, we talked a little bit offline about sometimes that list that you have goes up and down, and some of the best sort of most respected names in healthcare can be, like surprisingly by this measure, not quite do as well. Any other comments on that particularly?
Yeah, again, I'm not here to call out folks. I'll be the first one to give kudos where they're deserved. So, like this month in the July release, we had some folks move up in a big way. So, Methodist Health in Texas, because there's a couple of Methodist Healths, but the ones in Texas, they went from spot 14 to rank fifth. So, they made a big jump to an overall rating of a 4.3. That's pretty big, right? So when we look at our top 10, it's a close, pretty close. It ranges from a 4.1 in the top 10 to a 4.6, St. Jude having that 4.6. And they went up from 1 month from 4.5 to 4.6. But I will call out that we had some drops, which were surprising. And many things can lead into this. So I'm going to tell you what I think might have happened. NYU Langone. So I had them at number 2 in June, and they had a 4.4, which is extremely high. They had a volume of ratings of 2,696. Now I did the update. They dropped to a 4.1, still pretty darn good, right? It's in our top 20. But their volume dramatically increased to 4373. So that's, almost doubling their volume. So a couple of things could have happened. One, they could have been listening to me and pushed out a review request all at once to their entire organization, which is not what I recommend you do. So that's one scenario of what happened. Another scenario is that we're full of mergers and acquisitions in our industry. So if they merged with an organization, acquired an organization, and absorbed that organization's Glassdoor and Indeed ratings, and again, I could go off on a tangent on that, that could also be a reason why that dropped. And that happened with one of my clients that I work with closely on this, is that Glassdoor is kind of like Google in the sense that lots of profiles can pop up when people just want to leave a review, and it's not owned and managed by your organization. If you want to consolidate those so that you have one branded page on Glassdoor, you're going to end up taking a bunch of loose-goosey profiles, bringing them in, and that could really mess with your overall rating. So that's another reason why that change might have happened. So again, I'm not pointing them out.
No, I get, obviously, yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
like it's a learning thing for all of us, including Langone, to say like, wow, what did happen, right? Like we need to pay attention to those things.
Well, I think one thing that the theme of the day, a couple of conversations I've had even prior to speaking with you is, this is the kind of thing that some executives probably didn't put a lot of attention to back in the day when there was a few, every hospital had its own, every town had its own hospital. There was that hospital or not. And then, there was plenty of talent. Now you have very competitive markets and you've got a shortage of talent. So certainly some people care about these things for sure, probably more than used to. What for the hospital systems that want to sort of authentically, embrace this, take more of a control, but at the same time be authentic and showcase their employee experience online. What are some quick tips on how to do that?
So, you bring about some really good points there, right? One thing is that, this is not HR's responsibility alone. People want to point fingers and say, well, whose job is it? It really is. Employer branding is a leadership issue because it touches recruitment, retention, morale, even patient experience. So, we've spent the last, 15 years easily really focused on patient experience from the rating side, from the review side, from transparency. And if you think about patient experience, we can't deliver a great positive patient experience. We can't deliver that 5-star patient experience if the experience on our employee side is bad, right? So unhappy employees do not make for positive patient experiences. So, those things go hand in hand. So most often what's out there is not representative of your organization if it's left to organic results. So we've spent 10 years plus review requesting on the patient side, but we've not done it internally. So, I would say that some of the things that you'd want to do is to embrace that transparency piece. So not just from the patient side, but also the employee side. So look at your Glint scores or PG or whoever you're doing your engagement surveys, convert that to a 5-star scale, just like you do on your CAPS, right? Where you might take that overall rating of how likely are you to recommend us as an employer or overall happiness satisfaction score, and change that to a 5-star scale and publish it on your own site along with some comments. That's that transparency piece that that candidate's going to land on your website and be able to see that feedback from verified employees. Right. Ask employees to leave a review for you. That's a great way to have more engagement, whether that's on a regularly, so I would recommend not doing it all at one time. So typically when we do our engagement surveys, we do it all at once, right? Everybody knows it's coming. We open up that survey for 6 weeks, we gather the results, we analyze, and then we share it. I would not recommend that you ask for a review on a third party all at once. We want to spread it out for various reasons. One, for not to have dramatic ratings happening, drops and increases, but also just to have that recency factor. All algorithms, whether that's in LLMs, whether that's in search from an SEO standpoint, recency, relevancy, those things are important. So you want that ongoing feedback to be pushed out there. So you might tie a review request to someone's anniversary date. right? Send it out. They're celebrating
Yeah.
their anniversary of how, however many years they've been with your organization. Hey, great. Thank you, Stuart, for being part of our team. We want to celebrate you. Would you share your experience online, for others?
I love that. That's a
Those are
great
things that
idea.
I highly encourage.
That's a great nugget. I love that one. So let's talk about AI, 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 AI. We're all talking about AI a lot. How does that impact in the employer brand reputation?
It's really interesting because, again, this is somewhat of a newer um, viewpoint and newer focus for me and for everybody. I'm probably one of the few that's actually talking about it from a third party standpoint. And I think that it should mirror just like consumer, start doing those searches. The problem with LLMs, the AI type of searches in Chat GPT, Claude, the problem with those is that so many other factors, just like search history, kind of come into play. Whatever you've been talking about or searching on previously, sometimes weighs in. But do some searches on your own brand. Give it some good prompts. I'm a gastroenterologist with 15 years experience. I'm looking for a acute care facility to be on staff in a smaller city in the Midwest. Tell me who a top employer is that I should consider, who has job openings. Those are the type of searches, very long tail detailed searches, and start seeing what comes up. And you'll be probably not happy with the results a lot of the times. But you need to understand those results, and I would mirror them in all of these places that candidates could be searching, and really understanding what leads into those. So again, it's that fresh, relevant, frequent feedback that's rich in details and tells stories. So when you're requesting those feedback from your employees, I've been amazed at the feedback that we've been receiving from my clients that are requesting. As a marketer, I could not write the content that I'm getting in these responses from a creative writing standpoint. It blows me away, some of the reviews, the comments that we get. And we share those internally with management and leadership. So it's not just about recruitment. It's not just about like what you're looking like online. To hear this feedback up through leadership really kind of brings them back down from a macro view to like looking inside their organization at like, hey, this is what it's like to work on 4B in XYZ hospital within our system, right?
Right.
And looking at it at a very micro level to make change
So you
happen.
mentioned marketing a couple times in employers and like the gap between this category, like who's in charge. Like, so what's the disconnect between internal culture and the messaging? Like, what is the gap and who's in charge? Or tell us just a little bit about that.
It's we're all really in charge of it, and it needs to be a leadership down push, I believe. I think patient experience is even part of the equation, where I have had a patient experience leader that I've worked with previously at other organizations bring me into the HR team and to the marketing team and say, hey, this is something as a as the person, responsible for patient experience delivery, I have concerns about our internal, our employee experience because it directly impacts my ability to move the needle, which I'm being charged with. So sometimes it might not be marketing leading that charge. It might not be HR leading that charge. It might be PX. It could be someone in operations. But we all own that responsibility of what does that employee experience, what is it like, and how does it drive our overall growth for the organization, our retention for our employees, and then also our attraction and retention for our patients as well, and delivering that patient experience. So it's really very integral into the overall function of the organization.
So, we talked about metrics about like, for example, just, sort of averaging the scores, but are there any additional metrics they should be tracking that we're not seeing people track?
Absolutely. And this is where it gets a lot harder. So just like marketing, getting that ROI, looking at our KPIs, some of the KPIs is not about how many more impressions we get on the profile. Like, and I look at those, obviously. We doubled our impressions on our profiles for one of my clients. And that's a great KPI. We've doubled the clicks, another great KPI. But at the end of the day, did it drive more qualified candidates? Did we have faster time to fill the open positions? Those are the metrics that we need to be able to dig into, especially if we're investing dollars into sponsored profiles on these third-party sites, or if we're investing in any type of marketing to fill our positions, is understanding where our candidates are coming from, what their pathway is. So we talk about the patient journey, right? The consumer journey to how they discover care. We should be looking at our candidate journeys to how our candidates are coming to us, where they're coming to us, what's important, and actually maybe mapping those out as well. And I don't think we've spent as much time in our industry looking at those things.
Got it. A couple last questions to wrap up here. Any big myths about employer branding in healthcare?
I don't know about a myth. I just think that it's not important. That it's just kind of one of those things that, oh, it's Glassdoor, oh, it's Indeed. It's not just those sites. It's Reddit. What are people talking about? It's Fishbowl in Glassdoor. People are having real conversations about what it's like to work in your organization, and they're not having it with you. So, like it is your problem. It's leadership. It's very much a leadership issue, and it's not something that can be ignored.
Great. Final question is, so where should, health system or any other kind of entity for that matter start if they want to improve their employer brand reputation?
I would start by pulling together all the folks that I mentioned, right? And it needs to be a leadership. It needs to be a C-suite initiative, where they're pulling in and they're saying to their head of HR and their head of marketing and their head of patient experience, like, here's what we need to consider. Like, I just talked to an organization the other day. They literally have not done an engagement survey since 22. And then they're wanting to know, well, how do you think we would shake out if we did one now? And I'm like, well, let's see. Let's look at 2019, right? You were up. You were down in 22. I mean, everybody was. It was after COVID, but we're 3 years post COVID. And you really need to be doing this survey every year, and in between doing pulse surveys. So there's different issues that occur that you want feedback throughout the years, asking those quick SMS questions to get feedback. So I would say that's probably the most important piece, is opening up that channel of direct feedback if you're not doing engagement surveys. And it doesn't have to be a big fancy, $50,000, $100,000 survey. Crying out loud, open up SurveyMonkey and do some quick polls, right? That you want to get a temperature on. But you need to start listening, opening up that other listening post on what's being said in social, what's being said in Reddit, what's being said on Glassdoor. First, start gathering and getting that assessment of where are we at before then looking and saying, are we ready to address reputation on the third parties, or do we have to do some internal work first?
So I appreciate your time, Cynthia. This was great. I'll add a couple comments to add to that. First of all, I love the idea of, like, don't get too caught up. In the world of healthcare, whether you're at a provider, a hospital, or a device company, there's a lot of things to worry about, right? There's compliance, there's employees, there's customers, there's patient experience, like all of these things. So there's a lot. So in defense of some of the hospitals or health systems that have had a hard time with this, I can see how it's easy to keep your eye off the ball. At the same time, though, the reminder, like, well, you could just do SurveyMonkey. You don't have to go hire a team of experts, right? You could do something.
Right.
That's really important, is like not to get lost in the, what is the throughout the good in pursuit of perfection, so you get nothing started. So it's really easy to end up there. So I think that sort of guerrilla attitude is important when necessary. Number two, we're doing a ton of branding in the last couple of years, in addition to all the digital marketing that we're better known for, but we do a lot in branding as well. And, a lot of people, honestly, the clients, we have to really bring them to thinking about their employees as part of that process, right? We can't go create a new brand and not bring the employees along. And so, I think not just on the day-to-day, employee satisfaction, but where are the, especially with large organizations, your employees are one of your biggest stakeholders, right? So if you're not thinking about them, you're missing the boat, right? So how do we tie this
Exactly.
all together? And it's hard. I get it. It's really hard. I was describing our own agency to someone a couple times today, actually. It's like, it's really complex. There's a lot there, but you still got to do it. It's table stakes,
Yep.
what you just have to do. So,
Yep.
Cynthia, I appreciate your time. I look forward to working with you on some more projects here in the future. And thank you for attending today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.